Hello everyone. Today I will tell you about the journey of the fairy searching for evidence, and she was in danger when facing the evil enemy. Please follow along. Early the next morning, the doctor announced that Jack was out of danger, but still in a light coma. Tien breathed a sigh of relief, tears welling up in her eyes. But this time they were tears of hope. She leaned down, pressed her cheek against his hand, and whispered, "Rest assured, I will find the truth, no matter who I have to confront." And then, she left the hospital, but not to rest, but to begin her investigation. She returned to Vu's old house, to his former workplace, and asked old acquaintances. The deeper she went, the more she discovered something that made her heart cold. Vu not only hated Jack, he was also hunting for a box that Jack's father left behind before he died. Inside were all the inheritance papers of the farm. The poisoning of Jack could be just the first step in a plot to seize everything. And Tien knew she could not hesitate another second. She returned to Jack's old house. She groped her way upstairs, opening each old cabinet, each desk drawer, each paper box that Jack had carefully stored in the warehouse. The thin sunlight shining through the small window hit her sweaty and dusty face. Then suddenly, behind the bookshelf in Jack's office, she discovered an unusual gap, as if someone had hidden something and then forgotten it. Tien pulled the bookshelf aside, her heart pounding. Behind the thin wall was an old wooden box locked with a rusty iron padlock. She shook her hand and took the old keys from the desk drawer, and luckily, one of them fit. The box opened, and inside were thick files, along with an old brown notebook that had yellowed over the years. She opened the notebook. Jack's father's handwriting appeared, shaky but clear. The first lines left her speechless. "If you are reading this, it means Jack is in danger. In our family, not everyone is trustworthy." Tien turned the next pages, details of the secret will, the certificate of ownership of the entire land, and especially an unsent letter, written to Jack, telling of a silent dispute between Jack's father and his half-brother, Vu. Tien fell to the ground, her hands shaking. It was all clear. Vu had not only poisoned Jack out of jealousy, but he was also trying to seize all of Jack's inheritance, a plot that had been going on for years. With hatred nurtured in the dark, holding the box tightly in her hand, Tien wiped her tears and stood up. She knew she was holding what Vu wanted most, and also the key to exposing him. But that also made her the next target. And from this moment, the life and death game between her and the real villain began. Tien hugged the box to her chest, her palms cold but her eyes burning with determination. She knew that, from this moment on, every step had to be very careful. Vu would not stop, especially when he knew that the only person standing in his way now was her. She locked the box tightly, wrapped it in thick cloth, and hid it at the bottom of the suitcase she brought with her. Before leaving the old house, Tien quietly installed a small camera in the corner of the living room ceiling, just in case Vu came back to look for more clues. She was no longer the weak girl she used to be. Now, she was awake, knowing she had to fight. On the way back to the hospital, she called someone. It was Jack's father's personal lawyer, who had witnessed the first will that the family had never mentioned publicly. The man's voice on the other end was quiet, but when he heard Vu's name, he only replied with one sentence that sent a shiver down Tien's spine. "I knew this day would come." That same afternoon, the lawyer arranged to meet Tien at a small coffee shop near the hospital. He gave her a notarized copy of the original will, which clearly stated that all the farms, properties, and ownership rights were left to Jack. As for Vu, he was only entitled to a small, symbolic allowance. Jack's father once told me that if anything unusual happened to Jack, the first person to investigate would be Vu, the lawyer said, his eyes full of caution. But he didn't expect things would go this far. Tien clutched the file tightly, her heart burning. When she returned to the hospital, she found Jack's mother asleep beside her son's bed. Jack, still unconscious, was breathing more steadily. She bent down, held his hand, and whispered, "I will not let you lose everything because of a traitor's greed." We will get justice, and you will know who is truly standing by you until the end. Tien didn't know how long this battle would last. But she was ready, and she understood that there was only one way to protect Jack, to expose the whole truth, before Vu attacked again. That night, when the hospital was empty, Tien sat alone in the waiting room, the dim light shining on her tired but still resilient face. She looked at the small box placed on the chair next to her. Then opened her phone, and opened the video recording the moment Vu put something in the glass of orange juice, the most important evidence she had. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were no longer afraid, but cold. Just then, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. She picked up. The voice on the other end was deep and clear. I know you're holding that thing. Bring it to me before 12 noon tomorrow. Alone. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that Jack will wake up safely. Tien was speechless, even though she didn't say her name. That voice was unmistakable. It was Vu. He knew. He no longer hid his face. And now, he was threatening her outright. She stood up abruptly, looking towards the hospital room where Jack was lying. Feelings of anxiety, anger, and pain mixed together in her chest. But after a few seconds, her eyes calmed down. She knew that if she brought the box, it would be no different than giving the evidence to the enemy. But if she didn't go, Jack might be in danger again. She decided she would go. But not alone, and not empty-handed. That same night, Tien called her lawyer, sent him the video and asked him to immediately send a copy to the investigation agency, along with the will. At the same time, she sent a message to another person, a close friend of Jack's who worked in the press industry, who had said, as long as you have evidence, I will let the whole world know the truth. The plan to expose Vu was beginning. But this time, Tien was no longer the prey cornered. She would be the one to set the trap. And Vu would have to pay for everything. The next afternoon, Tien arrived at the meeting place on time, an empty lot on the edge of the forest. Deserted and cold, she brought the wooden box. But inside were only white sheets of camouflaged paper. The original had been given to the lawyer and sent straight to the authorities. Tien wore a long coat, buttoned up to the neck, and wore a small recording and positioning device that her journalist friend had provided her with in advance. She stood in the middle of the empty lot, the wind whistling in cold gusts. Just a few minutes later, from afar, an old pickup truck drove up. Vu stepped out, his gait leisurely but his eyes were sharp. He stared at her, a half-smile full of contempt. I told you I was alone. You really don't know what fear is. Tien remained calm, holding the box out in front of her. I came alone, as requested. This is what you want. Vu approached, grabbed the box and opened it. His eyes flashed for only a second before he realized it was a trap. No records, no will, just blank paper. His eyes turned angry and cold. Do you think you're smarter than me? At that moment, a noise came from behind. A group of people rushed out from behind the bushes. It was Tien's friends and a few people from the investigation team that had been notified in advance. But Vu had anticipated this situation. He quickly pulled out a mini smoke bomb from his jacket and threw it hard on the ground. A white cloud of smoke rose up, blocking his vision. In that chaotic moment, Vu turned and ran towards the slope behind the land. Tien panicked and shouted, "Don't let him escape. He's carrying a knife." But it was too late. In just a split second, Vu had disappeared into the forest, leaving behind the hazy smoke and the choking resentment in her heart. The journalist friend ran over, panting. "Tien, sorry," he prepared in advance. "But at least, we have enough data to put in the media. That blank paper is just bait. The real evidence is in the hands of the law enforcement agency." Tien looked in the direction Vu fled, clenching her fists. She did not cry, did not panic, only silently said, "You can run, but you cannot hide forever. Every sin, every trace you left, I will find them all. This game is not over yet." And in the fading afternoon sunlight in the cold wilderness, a new pursuit officially began, where justice was no longer a distant concept, but an oath written with tears, pain, and blood. While Tien was searching for the truth, going through every corner of memories and clues to expose the culprit. At the hospital, Jack's mother was the one who silently kept the fire of hope. She did not leave her son's bedside even for a single step. During the day, she sat next to Jack and prayed. And at night, she held his hand and fell asleep on the edge of the hospital bed. Even though her body was tired, her eyes always followed Jack's every breath, every slight movement, as if she let go, Jack would leave this world forever. Every night, she whispered in her son's ear, "Jack, you have to be strong. There is Tien who is fighting against everything for you. Don't let her down, don't let me down." And perhaps, it was that love, that waiting, that kept Jack. The next morning, when Tien returned to the hospital after a nearly sleepless night to confront Vu, she did not expect to receive such heartwarming news. The doctor walked out of the hospital room. His face no longer as tense as before. He smiled gently. "Congratulations, Jack's vital signs are stable. There are no more signs of poisoning in the blood. His brain still needs time to recover, but he can be discharged to go home to recuperate." Tien almost froze. It was as if someone had just removed a rock from her chest. Tears fell uncontrollably, but they were tears of relief, of hope that had just revived after a series of dark days. She ran into the hospital room, saw Jack still lying there. His face was still pale but more peaceful. Jack's mother looked up, her eyes red but her smile bright. "My son is over it. He won again." Tien nodded, walked over to hold Jack's hand, lowered her head and whispered, "We still have a big battle. But this time, we will overcome it together. I promise." No one knows how many storms lie ahead. But today, the mere fact that Jack is alive is a miracle. And for Tien, that is the motivation to continue the journey to the end of the truth.
Bài thơ nhớ bác. Vầng trán bác cao như núi, ánh mắt hiền sáng như sao, giản dị giữa đời thanh vắng, lòng yêu nước dốc biết bao. Chiếc áo nâu sườn vai gầy, gian lao chẳng chút đoạn đầy. Bác lo từng cây lúa nhỏ, bác thương từng giọt mồ hôi. Thu đi lá ngả bàn sân, con người kể chuyện xa gần ước gì được bên bác mãi nghe lời bác dạy ân cần.